As Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated prepares to celebrate our centennial milestone, it would only make sense to remember the awesome events that have transpired over that time. 100 years ago, in 1911, a child was born to Mr. and Mrs. Dosh Jackson. Brother Dosh Jackson, just shy of 100 years, is actively serving as a member of Eta Omega chapter of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated in Atlanta, Georgia. We have been blessed with the opportunity to interview the eldest member of our beloved 100-year-old fraternity. In this conversation, we would like to explore who Dosh Jackson is, where he has been, what life was like 100 years ago, his life within the fraternity, and where he sees the fraternity going. On behalf of the Brotherhood of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, it is an honor to share in this experience with our very own Brother Dosh Jackson. I am Brother Maurice Bodie, and welcome to a conversation with Brother Dosh Jackson. Thank you, Brother Jackson, for having us in your home this evening. As we begin the conversation, I think the first thing most people would love to know is just who is Dosh Jackson. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm Dosh Jackson. I was born in Macon, Georgia, February 27, 1911. I went to high school in Macon, Georgia, at Ballard Normal. When I finished Ballard Normal in 1928, I went to New York City. I was in New York City during the Wall Street crash, 1929. I stayed in New York 2.5 years and returned to Macon, Georgia. When I returned to Macon, Georgia, I organized a band, I played music, and we played for dances. I also was an employee of the Guarantee Insurance Company as a special agent.
Okay.
When I was in 1932, I went to Northeast Harbor, Maine for the summer. I worked in the kitchen. I was one of the cooks in the kitchen. And we spent the summer there in Northeast Harbor. And we would go into Canada, over in Bar Harbor, during our break. In 1933, the president of Morris Brown College and his father, the bishop, came to Macon to a conference, and I had the luck to meet them. And the president wanted to know why I was not in college. I told him I didn't have the money. He said, "Well, you want to go to college?" I said, "Yes, I'd like to go to college." He said, "Go home and get your bag and let's go back." So I was the chauffeur. I drove Bishop and the president back to Atlanta. They hired me as their chauffeur. In 1933, I enrolled at Morris Brown College.
Okay.
When I got on the college, I got on the campus, I found out that the only fraternity on the campus was Phi Beta Sigma. Well, that was not my choice. So in 1934, Bishop Love came to Atlanta. But Bishop Love was the guest of Bishop Fountain. So Bishop Fountain told me to take Brother Love to all of his meetings that week. So that gave me the opportunity to have one-on-one contact with our founder, Bishop Love. In 1934, I pledged Omega. I had difficulty pledging because you didn't have a chapter on Morris Brown College. So it just so happened that all of the business majors at Morris Brown were taking classes over the Morehouse. And my professor, my teacher, was Brother J.B. Bladen. Brother Bladen was the Grand Keeper of Finance of Omega. So I approached him and asked him what would be the possibility of me pledging at side chapter since I'm taking classes at Morehouse. The next week, that was the week that Bishop Love came to Atlanta, I also approached him that. So between Brother Love and Brother Bladen, they contacted the Grand Chapter, and they gave me permission to pledge a side chapter. So I was initiated at side chapter. After I was initiated at side chapter, I got back on the campus. We didn't have a chapter. So I called Brother Love. I said, Brother Love, I'm over here on Morris Brown campus. We don't have a chapter. I said, what would be the possibility of getting a chapter on Morris Brown College? Brother Love got in touch with Brother Oxley, our Grand Bosselus. So they arranged. 2 weeks later, I got a charter for Alpha Sigma chapter on Morris Brown College. In 1935, after I was still on Morris Brown campus, and I was appointed as a clerk at the post office. It just so happened that they put me on a night shift. So I worked at the post office at night. And in the daytime, I went to school in Morris Brown. I worked in the post office for 35 years. And during my time in the post office, I worked in quite a few positions. I was.
So,
yes.
If I could, Brother Dosh,
Yeah.
While we were speaking about the fraternity
Yeah.
and your experience with founder Brother Love, could you tell us a little bit about your take on Brother Love as a man, who he was, and his impression on you?
Brother Love was a very amiable person, gregarious type of person, and he made friends very easily. And during the 5 days I was with Brother Love, his biggest conversation was about Omega. He related to me the difficulties that he experienced trying to get the Omega Psi-Phi fraternity organized. And it was the reason that I'm an Omega man today is because my conversation with Brother Love.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Did you have the opportunity to meet any of the other founders?
Yes, I knew Cooper and Coleman, but I never did meet Just because Dr. Josh was a scientist, and the search that he was doing, he was not recognized in the States. So he moved to England. He moved to England the year before I was initiated, so I never did meet Dr. Josh. Dr. just never did come back to America.
That's interesting. You've also made it through 99 years so far.
Yeah.
And within the fraternity, you certainly chartered Alpha Sigma chapter, as you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
What other accomplishments are you proud of as it relates to the fraternity?
What other accomplishment?
Yes, within Omega Psi Phi.
Well, I've been boss loose, I've been vice boss loose, and I have worked with different committees, and I've been a financial member of Omega ever since 1935.
Very impressive. Very impressive. You certainly have left a legacy and a bar for many of us to try to achieve. So we thank you for that. As we reflect over your time, would like to get your perspective on what life was like 100 years ago. So could you share for us your perspective on what life was like for African Americans in the 30s and 40s during that time frame, or even earlier, as far back as you can remember?
As you know, that was segregation, and the Afro-Americans were limited to their access to the operations of the country, and we were very limited. I can remember if I'd go downtown and the white woman's coming down the sidewalk, I'd get off of the sidewalk, let the white woman by. It was just that difficult. There was no accommodation for blacks. Everything was separated. We had a black and a white, black and white. Well, black and colored, they would call it then. Yeah.
And so that gives us the perspective of African Americans in general. As an African American male, what's your perspective of our position over the course of your lifetime?
The black man was always considered the head of the household. He was the head of all the organizations. There were not many advances for females. So the black man was the dominant person in the house, and everybody looked to the father as the controller. He was the controller for everything. Yes.
Do you think black men or African American men have bettered themselves over the past 100 years?
The black man has bettered himself in some ways, and in some ways he has gone backwards. The black man have gotten to a certain level, they've forgotten where they came from. And which really is not good. And the black man has gotten to the no longer a role model, which made it very difficult. Very difficult. That's the reason we have so much trouble now with the young generation, because the black man is not functioning as a leader or as a father, as it used at one time was.